I wanted to quickly just add that.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to Communicate with Power. This is quite the day, actually. It's the signing ceremony on the Canadian side only, with Canadian invitees only, due to a certain person south of the border who decided to renege on the Gordie Howe Bridge deal. We'll get more into that later. What does it mean for Mark Carney? How is he communicating the message, not only on this, but on the tariff situation with the United States? And what are his options going forward? That's the serious part of this. But also, it's really I'm keeping more of the focus, and Laura, on how he's communicating this rather than arguing trade policies, which we are not experts, at least last time I checked. But Laura, it's been quite a very interesting week, a very good summer so far, wouldn't you say? I mean, we've had some nice
And
sunny days,
and
and
it's only halfway through.
right, and we haven't had a forest fire right here in Ottawa, but
Thank God
we
for
have
that.
we have
We are blessed. Even the smoke has dissipated. We've
well,
had a tremendous amount of rain, so the gardens are beautiful.
but to our
And
American friends, we don't want to rub that in. It is true. Toronto had like the worst. It was the smoggiest, smokiest day of any city in the world
sadly,
a week or so ago. So we've had our own share, but there's still 177 active wildfires in the province of Ontario alone. So this is the worst fire season in history, apparently. So to our American friends, in which this the winds have taken all this smoke, we genuinely feel badly. We thank you for all of your contributions to our firefighting, and of course to the Canadian
even
fire.
Mexico has sent up firefighters, and Prime Minister Carney thanked them, as well as the complication is the borealis forests are so dense, they're like the size of the province of Newfoundland. So getting in to get fires out is really, really difficult.
That's right. The boreal forests are,
Boreal, yeah.
you can't even get at them. But in the end, we also want to pay tribute to our Canadian firefighters who go south at the drop of a hat whenever there's a fire to help out there. And the state of Colorado did a wonderful motorcade tribute to the fallen Canadian firefighter who was fighting them with his helicopter and crashed and sadly lost his life just about a week ago. So actually should be seen as a great example of cross-border cooperation, right? The three originating countries of CUSMA, or USMCA as Americans call it, and it is sad that that is now you're seeing bills before Congress trying to get Canada to somehow pay or tariffs. Trump threatening tariffs on Canada for the wildfires. Well, I mean, honest to gosh, you just have to contain yourself, which is becoming a common phrase of mine. I'm noticing I'm containing myself a lot about what I'd fully like to say about this situation. We'll get into that a little more. Laura, we also saw a wonderful movie last night. And
Canadian IMAX is Canadian technology,
yeah,
and we saw Odyssey.
which is not a Canadian movie.
No, but nevertheless,
But wow, it was quite the event, didn't you think? I mean, that was an event movie, I think, almost more
totally.
than anything.
Yeah, and I did think that it's great that they released it in the summer, because you got to have a lot of time. You got to be ready
Yeah.
for this and
Yeah.
go with a sweater and.
But you know what? Every movie house packed,
packed.
which I think is a wonderful thing, and I'd like
Yeah.
to see obviously a lot more of that. Seeing we have filmmakers in our family, our next
of them.
generation, our next generation of McLaughlins are all in the movie business.
They do TV also.
They do TV as well, yeah.
Son
So
of a Critch.
Son of a Critch, yeah, they did 1 or 2 episodes of that. So we're looking, upbeat about the future of the entertainment business, even though there's a lot of, there are a lot of real challenges there. There's no question about it. So we're looking forward to seeing more on our real big screens. I know we have subscriptions to a lot of these Netflix kind of channels and all that, but in the end, boy, there's something about going to a movie and really enjoying it, and yeah, having popcorn and all that stuff that goes with it. So I'll try to do that maximum once a week. All right. Well, speaking of containing oneself, let's now turn to today, which is the opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge, Michigan to Ontario. And boy, that's to take the pressure off the Ambassador Bridge. A lot of people know the history of it. I'll just simply summarize by saying the Republicans in Michigan refused to cooperate in the building of the bridge. They would not pay a
Okay, I
nickel.
gotta let. Sorry to interrupt, but there's a squirrel out there. So
So what? We'll hear the barking aimed at the squirrel. What can you do about that, right?
he's been chasing that squirrel
Oh,
for many
yeah.
years.
They get several generations of them, but I digress. So really, we've had a situation where Canada spent every dollar to build the darn bridge, and under our good friend and former ambassador of Canada to the United States, Gary Dewar, when Stephen Harper was the prime minister, the decision was, let's go ahead, pay for it, and we'll sort out the payment. And a deal was struck to split the revenue, in which Canada would receive from the first dollar all the money through the tolls to repay for America's 50% share of the building of that bridge.
Which sounded like a really good idea at the time.
Yeah, so in the end, if they're going to be greedy, if they say it only has to be private sector, only has to be friends of the Maroon family or whatever deal they were cooking up there, lining the pockets of a lot of Republican congressmen. Yes, President Trump, and rumors are even America's ambassador to Canada, Pete Hextra, he admitted he was part of that. So you end up in a situation where, what do? You got to get it open. So we decided that, and then Donald Trump steps in and he decides he's going to change the deal. And so he does, to America's benefit. But I want to talk about really the communications of that by Mark Carney. I don't know if you've seen a lot of the clips of it. When asked, he's had several versions of what is going on with that. He's now landed on, actually, it's a good deal. He's saying positive about it. Few little changes. There's a parallel agreement in place. And he gave an answer that I think was like 2 minutes long. And by the time you're finished with it, you have no idea what's going on here. I don't know, were you impressed by his responses on this bridge issue, Laura?
Well, I feel like I understand him. I have a high trust factor with him. I think a lot of people do. We ask a lot of people everywhere we go, what do you think? And there seems to be a consistency in that people do trust his business acumen as well as his judgment. However, today on all media, there seems to be this big conversation that he gave the wrong answer. So,
well, yeah, I mean, it's not so much wrong, I think, Laura, as more it's, first of all, he's using a news conference to explain a complex thing. Big mistake number one. You cannot explain complex matters. Now, he's former governor of two banks, as we know, Canada and England, both of them complex in and of themselves.
But the media is blaming him because he didn't talk enough about the debt that we had on building that bridge in the first place. When he did try to shorten it up, he's being blamed for what he didn't say.
Look, I mean, come on. He's got some pretty expensive talent on board that could really help frame an effective, crisp message. So we know darn well, Laura, when we coach people, we say, what's your positioning statement? What's the first 30 seconds out of your mouth, which is the essential goal and summary of where are we on this issue? That was not there. It's 2 minutes of lateral back and forth, up and down on the one hand and on the other stuff.
Well as his nonverbals are not helping either.
Yeah.
Because he is demonstrating, like I've watched these answers over and over and over again, and verbally and non-verbally, he doesn't have it right.
But let's talk about
touching his face
how he
much.
doesn't have it. Okay, so there's the nonverbals, but just stay on the verbal for a minute here. So he, instead of the 30-second crisp positioning statement, half a dozen key sentences that is the essence of everything, doesn't have that. I'll say you can only get about 3 clear messages in a media appearance. So what are the 3 crisp messages? Usually they follow this: what is happening, or what we are doing, or what the Americans are doing. Why is this being done? Well, you know what, you pretty have to say Donald Trump, it basically undercut the agreement by insisting on this change. It does have impact. So what are the impacts? So, the so what questions. Is there an impact on the finances of the bridge? Well, it's a little unclear. It seems to he's saying it's not that big a deal. Um, so if you factor in the debt servicing charges first before you split 50, it's so complex. I don't think the average Canadian can absolutely understand most of that. So I don't even know if economists do. So, in the end, it's a confusion rather than a very clear. This would be easy, really, for him. So I'm very surprised that he kind of took it. He waited
in a
couple
press
of
conference.
Yeah, he took a couple of days. He went out to Calgary, wore the hat, he flipping pancakes, and boy, in one of the most important issues, he's not giving it that kind of focused, clear message. He's trying to do it in a casual, low-key, friendly environment. And I just don't think that worked for him. Then he came back and it seemed to be contradictions. Like the moment you get into contradictions, look out. So this was not a well-handled issue. And nobody should try to pretend that it is. I actually agree to this extent. I don't think it's a horrible thing that has occurred. I think that there are, yes, negatives, and we think you should stick with the agreement. You may not like all agreements, Mr. President, but that's the agreement that you inherited, and you have no leg to stand on other than bullying and taking an advantage that you have. If it didn't open, Canada would be swallowing the interest on and on and on without any revenue coming in to offset it. So we know we need it for trade purposes, and frankly, the Americans do too. But he has proven he's willing to punish the American consumer with those tariffs, which brings the bigger question, Laura, and that is the handling of all the tariffs. We now have 50% tariffs coming in on, I think it's August 19th, which is going to 5% of Canadian goods crossing the border. And he's doubling up on, aluminum and all kinds of major sectors. So it's another just punishing one. And then he hit 60 countries, including Canada, with another 10% because they say, oh, you're using slave labor. There's no proof to that. In fact, we did a contract with CORE, which is the Canadian Ombudsman for, what's that CORE stand for? Regulatory, whatever the heck it's called. But basically, it's to examine slave labor percentages, what the actions that are going on in the import of Canadian goods. Way back in the supply chain, back in China usually, where was there slave labor? Well, I was involved. I won't get into specifics other than a handful of very well-known brands were being investigated fully by CORE to determine what their contribution was. Did they turn a blind eye? Did they not care what their supply chains were? And I think that this does demonstrate Canada has cared about that. So I just think that here's what he's doing. Strip all this stuff away. Here's what he's doing. The Supreme Court of the United States of America, I believe it's now the majority, but certainly 4 out of the 9 were appointed by Donald J. Trump to do his bidding. And they overturned the originating tariffs that started this whole thing. They overturned it. It's illegal. You can't use fentanyl and terrorism across the border stuff as an excuse to thrash the free trade agreement and to slap all these major tariffs on Canada. So the Supreme Court said, give the money back. So here's what he's doing. He's finding any old excuse. So supply chain, slave labor, there's one excuse. And he's looking for others like wildfire smoke. He's trying that one out. And he's trying to get these various reasons to violate the agreement because he doesn't want to give the money back.
But also on the question of trust, when the Prime Minister is asked, because of all that you just said, and as we know, this leader of the American administration, as we know what that behavior is, do you trust that person? The look on his face, exactly.
No one trusts him, Laura.
Exactly.
Even his supporters don't really trust
so
him.
even if he did strike a better deal with him or whatever, can we even remember all of the things that have happened that we thought we had an agreement on. And in fact, there is no agreement. And we also have dealt with people who have gone into his office years ago, business people. We had this woman, former client, friend, whatever you want to call it, and she even noticed that his chair always has to be much taller than everybody else's, and she's of my height. And so you go in,
Or she had to look up towards
and she had to look up, and then people notice, and he will even comment on the height of a chair. He's very aware of the optics in for television and for presentation. But in terms of actual trust, the other thing that I wanted to discuss is that in the past 3 weeks, on a personal level and a business level, I've had long conversations with a client that we do business consulting with, and they are in Michigan, and how this affects people in the manufacturing, in academic, and also
tourism,
in medicine, in all of it. But real people are really affected, and they just want to get me out of here. But at the same time, they have families and all kinds of other things. So they, we coach them through some of these difficult conversations that they're going to have with their companies and with their families and all that kind of thing. It's really rocky for them also.
But this now brings us to, what should Mark Carney do prior to or on August 19th when the new round of tariffs come in? Well, here's my view. Any counter tariffs are by definition self-punishing. He did have a round of them when they first came in, the tariffs, and he did a round of counter tariffs.
But you know what? Chrystia Freeland, the former minister, she even said that they only understand one language, and that is force.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we're not in a forceful position typically in trade back and forth. We just aren't. However, should Mark Carney do nothing is really the question. My answer would be no. He has to do something.
Action.
He has to take some action here. He knows he has to, by the way. But notice he's I'll give credit. We kind of trashed him for his answer on that issue. But, he's very good at keeping his powder dry. And this is probably, I think the Trump people would love him to cough up potential threats and all kinds of things. But he's deliberately keeping his powder very dry. He said, we're keeping our options open, which is a diplomatic way of saying that, we're lining up some things here. And I'm very confident he will deliver on several things. The question is what? Counter tariffs are punishing, but they have a certain immediate emotional benefit. When Carney came in, he slapped those in on, I don't know, I forget what it was now, 85 products or something, all at targeted red states. So he was going after the red states. He might do a version of that again. That's one. Does he move into the bigger issue? And the big issues are hydroelectricity exports to the United States. It's huge, especially northeastern United States is dependent on Canada's hydroelectric from Ontario, Quebec, and Newfoundland, Labrador. So, I guess New Brunswick as well. So you end up in a situation there where, do we start hammering? Those are heavily, and not all, democratic states. We're punishing their consumers. You have to realize that. That would be punishing their consumers, because ultimately consumers pay, regardless of what Donald Trump has been trying to convince them of. Tariffs are in effect taxes on the end consumer of the products. That's where the importers get their money from. They get it from their customers. So it pays it into the U.S. Treasury, but in the end, it's the taxes. They're in effect taxes in the pocket, being pulled out of the pockets of American consumers. And that's a terrible thing. No Canadian likes that to happen. We don't like to see our American cousins, friends, being punished the way that is happening. And the U.S. Supreme Court, as I said earlier, has already ruled, can't do it, illegal, violation, give the money back. So he doesn't want to give money back. He never in his history has ever given money back. So he's looking for other excuses, whatever he can pull out of thin air, the Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930. Hey, Mr. Smoot, thanks for extending that Great Depression through your brilliance on tariffs. So he's pulling out those things that have never been deployed because they're disastrous, and he's going to employ those. So in the end, Mark Carney is left with a few options. Does he do that? Does he withhold like we are giving? By the way, what's the number one reason why we have a trade imbalance with the United States? Oh, our oil exports to the United States, which are given to them at 20% discount to the Texas intermediate oil price. So that's the benchmark. And Americans are getting a 20% discount. And he's complaining because that's the number one reason why our exports are greater than our imports from the United States. And he thinks that's totally unfair. We're being ripped off. It's a $250 billion deficit. It's nothing of a kind. It's less expensive, more convenient for American companies to import and consumers to import from Canada than it is to try to manufacture it themselves or import from other countries. So that is the truth of it. And I'm not hearing, by the way, I'm not hearing the Carney government do enough. These are the facts. And I actually would love to hear Mark Carney and his ministers, there's a few of them that do it, to say directly to the American people, and by the way, to our American friends, we are sorry that you are in effect paying these tariffs. You are personally, your families are paying it $1,700 a year, maybe it's more. And that's very unfortunate. It doesn't have to be. We need to go back to free trade on both sides. We both benefit from it. He needs to say that.
But even if they're not in business, if they're in academics, the faculties are being decimated because of certain decisions that they make about hiring women or hiring different
DEI.
Yeah, and the same with in the medical world for doctors. Research money is being withheld and things like that. So they cannot trust, even if they've had 18 years of post-secondary education, that they're going to be able to do the kind of research. Anyway, the helicopters are overhead and the people.
British High Commission people are busy on the lawn. But let me just conclude then, and I'd love to hear from you, our viewers, listeners, readers, that what do you think Mark Carney should do? I believe politically and domestically he can't roll over and play dead for 2.5 years and do nothing until Trump leaves office. I think that he's got to do something. I think he will do something. I think it will be hurtful to the United States. It has to be, or it gets ignored. Does he risk triggering greater tariffs? Well, in the end, 3/4 of Americans don't want these tariffs. And it's going to get more intensified as it becomes clearer and clearer that the higher he puts these tariffs, especially on Canada, the more damaging it will be to the American economy, not just to their grocery bills and at the gas pump, but in virtually every part of their lives. So this is a serious situation. We do wish our best to the Carney government.
We love the American people.
We love the American people, but obviously Canada's having a very profound and serious rupture, to use Mr. Carney's words, in our relationship. It is unfortunate, but in the end, sometimes the fight is, you look for a fight like Trump does, but sometimes the fight is brought to you, and that's what's happened. The fight has been brought to Canada and to Mexico, but to Canada in particular here, and we need to show backbone. Canadians want us to show backbone. They want us to do something, and Mr. Carney is on the hook to do it. All right. Well, we'll talk another day. We hope you're enjoying your summer period, and we hope that you can get some rest in between all the bad news coming from elsewhere. So until next time.
Go see a movie.
Go see a movie. Thank you very much.